In 1987, I was a student teacher, 22 years old, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. I thought everything was going to be great. And I had this amazing master teacher. In fact, she was a Christian, a believer like me. And I learned every wonderful thing I know about teaching from her. But next door, there was a teacher who abused the children every day. And I witnessed it. She'd grab them and yank them and scream in their little faces. And she mostly picked on the wiggly little boys who couldn't sit still to save their lives. Well, so I asked my master teacher, I said, I'm terrified of this woman. I'm the same height as her. These little kids were first graders, 6 years old. They came up to her waist. And I couldn't imagine how terrified they were. So I said, I'm learning about reporting child abuse. I see some. It's the teacher next door. What do I do? And my master teacher said, today's the day you learn about teacher unions. And she told me that the school the district couldn't get rid of this teacher because the unions were defending her, protecting her job. So the little kids were out of luck. And in fact, I spent several years of my career watching as that woman continued to teach until she decided to retire. I think that's evil. So when I became a teacher and I sat down to sign my contract, they told me I had to pay the teacher unions. And I said, oh, no, thanks. They let people abuse children. I don't want to join. And they said, you don't have to join, but you have to pay. And I had to pay almost the entire dues amount, it was like $50 less a year, to be a non-member and to be forced to accept their representation. And that's how my journey with teachers' unions started. So about halfway through my career, I thought, we're all forced to fund these unions. None of us like them. None of us agree with what they're doing. Oh, my master teacher also told me they were spending all of our money on far-left politics. She even told me they were putting advertisements in Playboy magazine. Now, I never saw that for myself. I could only believe what she said. I don't think she saw it either. But I was totally against what they were doing with teacher money. So halfway through my career, I thought, I have to pay these people. I have to accept their representation. I think I'm going to become a union rep. So I did. So, okay, here's the funny thing, though. Well, it made me a good plaintiff when we sued him. Let's put it that way. I could make no change, zero. In fact, I'd go to state-level union meetings, and what would happen was they'd brutalize us as teachers. We'd ask, why are you spending our money this way? They'd brutalize us, silence us. So here's what I discovered. The so-called teacher unions are not really teachers. Maybe they taught, but they're not really teachers. They don't have the heart of teachers, and they're not really unions. They're this massive political action committee that uses teachers as pawns to fund a very radical, and I'll say it, demonic agenda. Did you know that the teacher unions use mafia tactics to silence teachers like me? I bet there's teachers, in fact, I know one teacher that's coming to see me today. I can't wait to give her a big hug. The unions have been chasing her out of her job and trying to take away her teaching credential. She loves Jesus. She's a good teacher. That's what they do. They chase out the good ones. Teachers were forced to fund these unions for decades. So were all government employees forced to fund unions until the lawsuits. And just in case I forget to mention it, if you're paying another government union, high chances your union's just as corrupt as the teacher unions. So find out, because at the end I'm going to give you 5 smooth stones to fight against these unions, and you can join us. So this was how I discovered that our schools, our state, and our nation were captured by a demonic agenda, or a communist agenda, an atheist agenda, an agenda totally antithesis of the American Judeo-Christian virtue. So, slideshow can start. So, in the old days, we learned from classic writers. One of them was Henry David Thoreau. We've pulled him out of our schools now, along with all the other amazing classic writers. And this is my favorite quote by him. There are 1,000 hacking at the branches of evil to one who is striking at the root. Today, we're going to be talking to you about a whole lot of evil going on that's been usurping our school, usurping our families, usurping our authority, trying to usurp God, but good luck with that one. That's not going to happen. God's on the throne. So all these things we're going to learn about, and I'm about to read you a laundry list, those are all the branches, okay? What's the evil root? What's the root we need to strike at? I'm here to convince you It's the so-called teacher unions. They are, and along with their, their pals, like Planned Parenthood and Southern Poverty Law Center, these folks are the root evil that's seeking on purpose to destroy this country. They don't want a constitutional free republic. Why? Because it's built on Judeo-Christian virtue. It's built on the Word of God. They want us to be an atheistic, socialist, communist country. And they're using Marxist tactics to do it. So I'm here to convince you to stop fighting the branches. Let's take out the root. Okay, now I'm just gonna show you some evidence, because I know there's probably some people in the room going, oh, come on. The stuff that she's telling us can't be true. So I'm gonna read a list, just a short list, of the things that teachers' unions are behind. 100% behind. Funding, lobbying for, pushing people into office, everything. They're behind the pornographic sex ed. Teaching our kids to have anal sex. That's against God's word. Teaching them condom relay races, to have abortions, to murder their own children. Exposing them to drag queen events. Teaching them, hey, when you were born, your parents didn't know your gender, so they assigned you one. There's really a whole spectrum of genders. You can pick from all these genders. That's 100% against God and his word. That's how we know it's demonic. Okay, boys dominating girls' sports, invading girls' locker rooms. Yep, the teacher unions are behind that too. By the way, they don't deserve to be called teacher or union. They're neither one, but we'll just call them that because that's how we all know them. Transgender push on our children. I talked to a high school teacher the other day. In her whole career, 20-some years, she never had one transgender child in her class. Neither did I, 28-year career. She now has 9 in one classroom. Teacher unions are behind critical race theory, social emotional learning, racial equity discipline policies, turning our schools into war zones and literally causing school shootings. They're behind wicked school board members, Black Lives Matter in school, social justice agenda. They are behind the removal of the Ten Commandments used to hang in every school in our country. The teacher unions and their pals are behind removing 10 Commandments, removing prayer, removing the study of the Word of God, which our schools were built upon. They opened the door to Planned Parenthood and other special interest groups in our schools, and they captured our teachers, colleges with a communist agenda. Now, it's not just the schools. You might think, well, they're teacher unions, so they're only destroying the schools. Not so. They're destroying our state and they're destroying our entire country. And we can't let them do that. You know that infanticide bill we're all fighting? Yes. Well, the teacher unions were too clever to put their name on this one. But they put into office every legislator that's pushing that demonic agenda, that bill, and every other demonic bill that's coming out of our state house and nationally. Teacher unions are behind open borders, abolishing ICE, defunding police. Every evil you hear about today, the teachers unions are behind it. They're behind the push for mail-in ballots only and no ID when you vote. They're behind adding more judges to our federal and district courts, attacks on the First and Second Amendment, higher taxes, fake science, and fake history. Now I'm just going to show you a few pieces of evidence in case you don't believe me. Okay, real quick. California Healthy Youth Act is the radical sex ed. Here's the bill sponsors. You can see ACLU and Planned Parenthood were involved. Next slide. Now here's the coalition of supporters. Check this one out closely. California School Boards Association. They're under the National School Board Association that calls parents domestic terrorists. Okay, they're a union. California Teachers Association, that's a union, and the PTA. Did you know the PTA was captured? They are. In the 1960s and 70s, the teachers' unions bullied them into a stance of neutrality. Now the teacher unions control the PTA. You paying the PTA? Don't pay them anymore. Start an independent PTO at your school. Next slide. I'm showing you, this is a screenshot from California Teachers Association website. You can go look it up yourself. I know the print is small. But what I have in the box there, they are bragging in October 2013 that the Teacher Association and the PTA, they're both listed on here, they're bragging that they passed the transgender bathroom law, that they are behind boys dominating girls' sports. Next slide. Here's we missed a slide. Okay, how do they get away with this? The teacher unions, this is an NEA, the national, actually rewrote the scientific method. The part I have highlighted for you in yellow, the strikeouts are their strikeouts. They removed empirical evidence and the repeated steps of the process. That's the whole scientific method. And they changed it with scientific theory and consensus. And so then what do? They only accept the consensus of the radical leftists that agree with them. They don't accept facts. Science is from God. Next slide. They brought Black Lives Matter into our schools. Teacher unions helped start Black Lives Matter. I know that because they used to force a magazine on me, and they bragged on the cover of it that they helped these two teachers start it. We disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure. That means they attack the very institution God created. That's evil. Next slide. This is the teacher unions. Every year they have an annual meeting, the NEA, and they meet. This was in Minneapolis, 2018. First thing they do is go out and protest. I saw this with my own eyes. I was there in Minneapolis. They were protesting to abolish ICE and for sanctuary cities. And the thing that broke my heart the most is they taught that young lady to flip off the President of the United States instead of teaching her to be a blessing. That's just wicked. Next slide. This is just a little more proof for you. This is a new business item passed by the teacher unions in 2017, telling us that they're in partnership with Southern Poverty Law Center, who, by the way, call Christians, what do they call us? They have that map. I forget what it's called. Anyway, they hate us. The ACLU, Gelson is Gay, Lesbian, Straight Education Network, and they train in unconscious bias, which is if you're white, you automatically are a bigot, and you automatically hate children, and they teach this to white teachers, bully them. Next slide. This is just, again, California Teacher Association website screenshot. They have, in partnership with Southern Poverty Law Center, children can literally go on this site, click on a live link to SPLC, and report you as a hater. Report their teacher, their friend as a hater. What makes you a hater? You believe marriage is between a man and a woman. You believe there's only two genders. Our children are literally being turned into brown shirts, Hitler's brown shirts, in our public schools. And teachers, if you're still funding the unions, you're paying for it. I know you might not have known that, but you know now. Anybody else funding a government union, you're likely funding it too. Okay, next slide. All right, PTA, just as proof, this was a gal who worked for the American Federation of Teachers, the smaller of the two teachers unions, led by Randy Weingarten. This gal said the PTA has credibility. That is why we always use the PTA as a front. How do you like that? They've been using us as a front. I paid the PTA for years. I was the PTA teacher rep for a long time. All right, next slide. A little depressing, but what can we do about it? Okay, so these so-called teacher unions, what you have to understand is they're really atheists, communists who are trying to undermine our free republic. So as long as we know the truth, we can fight it. So let's just take a look at this. Our American founders told us something in their writings. The only way to keep a free republic is with a well-educated and moral citizenry that can self-govern. For that very reason, our founders built the most incredible educational system in the world. Our people were most well-educated. You can't even believe, I was listening to something the other night that some of our founders started college at age 13. Okay, and the stuff they were learning is stuff most of us had never even learned before. We had an amazing educational system. It was built on morality. The Bible was our first textbook. Okay, and as I said, the Ten Commandments hung on the walls in our classrooms. We began with prayer. We were not teaching religion, we were teaching virtue, truth, commandments, precepts. Okay, what do you do if you want to destroy a free republic? You remove all that. You remove the outstanding education, you remove the morals, and now people can't self-govern. Okay, next slide. Just a little more proof. There's these communist goals, maybe you've heard about them. They were read into our congressional record in 1963 to warn us. There's 45 of these goals. Goal number 17 is striking. Get control of the schools, use them as transmission belts for socialism and current communist propaganda, soften the curriculum, put the party line in the textbooks, get control of the teachers' associations. They did all of that and more. Next slide has just a few more for you to see. Discredit the American Constitution, break down cultural standards of morality, discredit the family as an institution, emphasize the need to raise children away from the negative influence of parents. Unbelievable. Okay, they're not lying to us about it. This is what they're doing. And they're doing it through the so-called teacher unions. Okay, next slide. I'm here to help you to understand something. I keep hearing a lot of negative talk about teachers. I'm a teacher. I taught 28 years. I'd still be in the classroom if it wasn't so corrupt. God called me to come out and expose it. My husband taught 42 years. He'd probably still be there if it wasn't the teachers' unions destroying everything he tried to do. A lot of great teachers are leaving the classroom. Okay, and teachers are feeling beat up. They're feeling like America hates them. You know what communists want to do? They want us to make us hate teachers, hate pastors, hate police officers, right? Hate doctors and nurses. They want us all to hate each other. It's called divide and conquer, critical theory. Okay, I'm here to show you teachers don't agree with this stuff. The teachers' unions themselves did these surveys over a 35-year period, 3 different surveys asking teachers, what's your political affiliation? How do you lean? Look at that red circle. The majority of teachers lean conservative. And if you look at the left, the column right to the left that says percent liberal, that tiny little percent, 12, 8, and 13, that's the percent that agrees with the left, with that leftist agenda. But 100% of teacher union money goes to the leftist agenda. So they're not representing teachers, they're using teachers as pawns. And they bully and terrorize teachers. And we have to have empathy for teachers and love for teachers and help them, because nobody can fight the mafia by themselves. And the teachers' unions are a mob. And they use mafia tactics, and teachers need your help. So I'm here today to help show you how you can help. Next slide. So this is most teachers pay about $1,000 in dues. I know some that pay $1,200 or $1,300 a year. That's how it's broken up. The state gets most of the money, the state union, the national union. Most teachers appreciate their local. The local gets chump change. And the local, by the way, they're just trying to survive in a corrupt system. Next page, or not page, slide. So, okay, here's the membership of the NEA and the AFT, the 2 largest national unions, based on their websites. If each teacher's paying $1,000 a year, and like I said, a lot of them pay more, so it's an average, easy math. The second graders could have done this one. So if you have 4.7 million people paying $1,000 a year, that's almost $5 billion a year they're collecting in union dues, tax-free. And they spend it all on politics. And the majority of justices at the US Supreme Court agreed with us that collective bargaining in the public sector is political. It's all politics. None of it is for the good. Okay? And then they coerce educators and other government employees as boots on the ground to push campaigns and everything else for the unions. Next slide. So, what am I here to ask you to do today? I'm asking you to be the light. Are you a teacher? Be the light in your school. I'm going to teach you 5 smooth stones to help defeat this Goliath union that's tyrannizing our schools and our state and our country, our families. Be a light, teachers. You're not a teacher? Get behind a teacher. Be a light. Okay, I'm going to show you how to do that. So the scripture in Ephesians 5 says, have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather expose them. For it is shameful even to speak of those things which are done by them in secret. Do you know they're sexualizing our kids? Do you know they're for pedophilia? These are sick people. They want to have sex with little kids. I don't know about you, but I'm done. We have to stop them. No more, I can't say anything. You know, there's no more, oh, I'm afraid I'm going to hurt somebody's feelings. Oh, I'm afraid to say that because they're going to bully me. Let them bully you. Let them. Remember we used to say sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me? Right? Besides, Jesus is coming and he expects us to stand. Okay? So, but all things that are exposed are made manifest by the light. You can make it manifest. Expose it. You, by being light. For whatever makes manifest is light. Let's be the light. Next slide. Okay, so David and Goliath. I love David. When we brought our lawsuit, it was 10 teachers from California. They say nothing good comes from California. 10 teachers from California fighting the most wicked, powerful unions in the country. Kamala Harris, who was our assembly, what was she? Our attorney general. Do you know she intervened against us? Intervened our entire state of California against us. I bet you were on our side, but your tax dollars weren't. Obama-Biden administration intervened the entire country against us. So we stood at the Supreme Court, 10 teachers, all Christians, all in love with our students, all in love with learning, wanting to do what was right against this wickedness. And who stood against us? The entire country and the entire state. And the largest unions in the country, and most brutal. So people said, hey, you're like David versus Goliath. And we said, hey, we like that because David won. Okay, so how did David win? With God, of course, but I love David's attitude. Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? Who are you, teachers' unions? How dare you defy our God? How dare you? So David chose for himself 5 smooth stones from the brook near to the Philistine. And when the Philistine looked at David, he disdained him. Who cares if they disdain you? Who cares? Get out your stones. Then he said to the Philistine, you come to me with a sword and a spear and a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord God of hosts. That's all we have to do. That's all we have to do. These teachers' unions don't have any power over us. Who cares if they use mafia tactics? Who cares if they're mobsters? Who cares if they lie? Who cares if they say bad things? They've said a lot of bad things about me. They've done hit pieces on me. They called me the spawn of Satan. I took that as a compliment. They're calling me what they are. Okay? So, next slide. What do? Every one of you received a bag today, and in your bag, there's a little flyer from me that looks exactly like that. And it has a QR code on it. And whenever you pull it out now or later, all you have to do is, take a picture with your phone on that QR code, and it'll take you to our website, to a landing page that looks something like this. Join our movement. We have 5 smooth stones for you. Smooth stone number 1, adopt a teacher. See it listed there. Here you go, adopt a teacher. All you have to do, it takes 3 minutes to learn how to adopt a teacher when you go on the website. Basically, you're doing this: embracing, educating, enlightening, empathize. I'm so sorry you've been used as a pawn to destroy our country and our families. Please stop doing it. Encourage and empower them. They don't have to pay unions anymore. Did you know most of them don't know that? Because the unions made sure to pass a bunch of laws because they control this state. Did you know that it's the teacher unions that have a 2/3 plus supermajority in our California state legislature? The unions control our state. Stop paying them. Teachers don't know they don't have to pay them because the unions passed a law that their employer's not allowed to tell them that they've been freed. You need to tell them they've been freed. You're in this room, you're online. If every one of you tells at least one teacher or one government employee they've been freed, and then you stand with them, truly adopt them, they're terrorized. You couldn't stand up to the mob by yourself. Stand with them, walk on campus with them, help them opt out. Because stone number 2, next slide, is a mass union exit. We literally help you get out of the union. So all you have to do is click on that button that says union exit. Teachers, we know you've been deceived and they've told you so many lies. We have this very short little toolkit that dispels all their lies and tells you all you need to know to give you the courage to opt out. And then when you click on step 2, we partner with another organization that literally has a map of the United States. You click on your state and every union in your state comes up, government unions, and it walks you through how to get out. They harass you, they have a legal team to help you. Liability insurance. Teachers, you've been told you're going to be sued if you don't stay in the unions. That's a lie. The fact is, the union's liability insurance is inferior. You can get liability insurance from a Christian organization, Christian educators. I bet they're here today. And another one that you don't have to be a Christian. And you get double the coverage for a fraction of the price. And the teacher unions, they'll only defend you if you get sued. Why are you going to get sued? You're not going to do anything bad to a child. But the teacher unions will not defend you if there's a job action against you. And more good, godly teachers have job actions against them. These folks will defend you if there's a job action against you. They'll send a lawyer. Next slide. Stone number 3. This is for everybody. You have options. The schoolhouse is on fire. The children are trapped inside. So are the good, godly teachers. They're trapped inside. We would never leave our children trapped inside a burning building. We'd pull them out, then put out the fire. We need to get our kids out. Look, I was a single mom for 7 years. I know how hard it is to think, how could I possibly not, use the government schools? But Star just talked to you about how important it is not to rely on government. And I'll tell you what, our founders never, ever dreamed in a million years that the government would be funding our schools. Ever. They're not supposed to be putting money or curricula into our schools. Why? You can see the results. Right? Get your kids out of the schools. but you don't know what to do. All you have to do is click on our third stone, school options. We partner with another organization that helps you. There's dozens of options. It's not just homeschool, private school, public school. No, there's so many options. Teachers, there's options for you too. We just hooked a teacher up with an independent organization. She'll be making more money than she was in the public schools. And guess what? They won't be using her to fund politics. They won't be harassing her. She won't be crying every day anymore. Okay, next slide. Stone number 4. We have toolkits. This is for all of you. Look, you live in a community with a public school, so even if you pull your kids out, you still need to stay engaged. Maybe you're running for school board, maybe you're not. Show up. How did it get this way? Nobody showed up. And I can tell you, I taught for a long time. I'd go to school board meetings, I'd be the only one there. That's our fault, folks. The church fell asleep. We're awake. We're awake, so watch out. Watch out. So we have 4 really great toolkits right now and growing. We keep writing more. Helped you to understand critical race theory, but that second one, Parent Advocate Toolkit, I really encourage you to read because it helps you to learn how to stand up at school board meetings. It was written by a gal who's been doing it for a long time, long before it was popular. Okay, next slide. Stone number 5. I just circled this one, connect with allies. If you click on that one, it takes you to an interactive map. We have boots on the ground, grassroots all over the country. We partner with these groups. All you gotta do is click on it and join one of them. They can help empower you. Next slide. Okay, I wrote a book. It's called Standing Up to Goliath. I brought some today, and my husband's out there, and I can sign them at lunchtime if you want to get one for your teachers. The reason I wrote the book is not just for teachers. It's very teacher-friendly, but for everyone. And it's all stories. It's testimonies from brave teachers, from parents who've been awake for a while, from students, helping expose. There's 3 chapters on the radical sex ed, showing you where it came from, how the law was written, how they sneak Planned Parenthood into the classroom. Okay, all of that's in there. And I wrote it because I knew if we could get this Goliath out, we could fix everything. So please, when you adopt your teacher, share this book with your teacher. Share it with a parent, a school board member, a principal, anybody. It's also corrupted. And then we discovered there's a lot of people nowadays that don't read much, probably because of our poor educational system, right? So we started praying, Lord, we think we need to make a movie. We think we need to give people a visual. And so 4 years ago, my husband and I started working on this with some friends. None of us had any money. Just in faith, we started creating this movie. And we worked on it for 2 full years without any money. And we'd get a little, my husband and I would donate a little, or we'd get a little donation, and we'd hire this friend of ours who's a pastor, and he does video work on the side. And we just hire and get people on camera, little by little. And about 1.5 years ago, the Lord brought the most amazing funding. And that funding opened the door to a production team that had the chops to really do a good job. So we partnered with them. And we launched a movie called Whose Children Are They? We launched it on March 14th in theaters nationwide. But now it's available streaming on Salem Now, as it says there. And I want to spend a few minutes of my talk letting you see a 4-minute sizzle reel of our movie in hopes that you will use this as a tool to show parents and teachers what's really going on in our schools. Go ahead, guys.
Public education has gone off the rails.
Once you get into this idea that it's really the government's job to educate children, you end up in a very, very dangerous place, and I don't see anything good coming out of that.
When we look at this radical agenda, the way our children are being exploited and the way parents are getting shut out, it comes down to one fundamental question. Whose children are they?
Whose children are they?
Whose children are they?
¿De quién son esos niños?
Whose children are they?
Where did this idea come from that we're even asking whose children are they?
It's where all the money is. It's why the union is there. It's why it's so corrupt.
Now it's about power and money and politics, and somehow the kids are getting lost in all of that.
Our teachers are bullied. Parents are shut out.
America as we know it is being reimagined in a very dangerous way.
That just lights a fire into my butt, and that's why I want to put a stop to critical race theory so that a lot of friendships can be saved and that we can just all get along.
You know, I hesitate to say that there was a silver lining to COVID, but parents suddenly had this window into what their children were learning day in and day out.
Critical race theory is dividing our children in ways that are unacceptable.
It pits one race against another.
You cannot use racism to eradicate racism.
Less than 1/3 of America's school children are proficient in anything.
They're teaching these kids X-rated sex acts.
I don't want my daughter exposed to that.
The school system wants to indoctrinate us teachers first before we indoctrinate your kids.
Certain ways of thinking are approved, and certain ways of thinking are not.
They sentenced me to jail because I wanted a better education for my daughters.
I'm not interested in tolerance.
Their whole goal is to intimidate, to silence the opposition.
There's so much damage done by the lockdown on the students.
Days turned into weeks and then months.
It doesn't actually surprise me that there's been more suicides. I know I've had those thoughts.
They told me, if you want to teach, you'll sign.
We want to make sure that teachers know that you do have another option.
Right now in schools, it is not safe to be a teacher.
This was the most preventable mass murder in American history.
Less than 30 seconds, it was done.
And my daughter was murdered at the school.
It doesn't matter whether you're a Democrat or Republican, you're a mom and a dad first.
And if we lose this battle on the educational front, then we lose not only our country, but we lose our kids. And we lose the ability to bring our children up the way that we want.
They are assaulting parental rights. They are not respecting our cultures, our values. They're not respecting our voice.
The reality is we're not dissenters, we're the parents.
So the question has to be asked. That's the Lord's doing. That's the Lord's doing. So just to finish my thoughts today, first of all, I gave you 5 smooth stones. And we've provided these 5. There's many other stones out there you can hurl, but we've provided 5. Don't leave them in your pocket. Be like David. Get your sling out and start throwing them. And just because the left is the way the left is, I'm not talking about literally throwing stones at the teachers' unions. Talking metaphorically here, people. People who've been educated understand metaphors. It's terrible, isn't it? So don't leave your stones in your pocket. And the other thing is this, look, when the Lord first called me to this battle was I'd been fighting the unions a long time inside the schools, but when he first asked me, I want you to write editorials to expose these unions, and I went, whoa. Okay, and it was part of my Bible study, and I said yes, and I wrote my first editorial, and I didn't even know how to submit an editorial. And God had it placed, and it ended up going all over, and within 6 months, I was bringing a lawsuit to the U.S. Supreme Court. Only God. I was a kindergarten teacher. Kindergarten. I taught kindergarten. I didn't have one contact in this world except the most important contact. So I'll end it with this. Joseph, Old Testament Joseph, got threw in a pit. All these horrible things happened to him. Then he raised up to second in command because of God. What they meant for evil, what that so-called brutal teacher unions mean for evil, God will use for good. So long as his people start throwing their stones and standing up. God bless you, God's people. Thank you for letting me be here today.